In chapter 15, just before what we read today, Moses offers a great song of praise and thanksgiving to God. The people have been brought out of Egypt. They were taken away from the subjugation that they had faced for 400 years as a people. We sometimes hear the word slavery referred to the time. It was more like indentured servanthood. They were the workers, some of whom probably helped build the pyramids in Egypt. But they were always seen as outsiders. They were hated. There was a violent killing of the first sons. They wanted to get out of there. It was a very hard time for them. It was not their place. And God helped to get them out. They maybe were like Patrick Henry, who wrote during the American Revolution, "Give us liberty or give us death." Well, sometimes I think death is a bit overrated. I recall back about 1960, I was in elementary school. There was all of that threat and anxiety about Russia having the atomic bomb. And so there were ads around about, if you hear of a bomb threat, dive under your desk or a table. A lot of good that would have done. For some reason, the teacher asked our class, if you were to die in a nuclear holocaust or to live under the Russians, which would you choose? And everyone else in the class put up their hand to death. I thought that was strange. After all, living under the Russians do it all the time. The people celebrated that God had gotten them out of Egypt. It was a great and important change for them. They traveled from Goshen in Egypt across the Red Sea into the desert of Shur, and then they traveled into the desert of Sin between Elim and Mount Sinai. This was their liberation. They went in to the wilderness. And then we come to chapter 16, the next chapter that we had today. The people traveled into the desert, and then the whole community grumbled to Moses and Aaron, if only we had died by the hand of the Egyptians. They were in the second month. Says in the text, in one of the texts anyway, that they were on day 15 of the second month. The Jewish calendar is somewhat different than ours. There are 13 months in the year, 28 days in every month. The end of the year, they make up for the extra day. So they were only 43 days into their liberation. They were to spend 40 years in the wilderness. And so they had another 14,557 days left. Well, they were hot, they were dry, they were starving, they were out of food, and they were in some ways wandering. Where are they to go? And so it maybe seems natural enough that they look back to Egypt and they said, we sat around the flesh pots. We had lots to eat. We knew the life. It wasn't that bad. It's better than dying in the desert. And there may be a reality in which it did look attractive. It has been suggested that Egypt is one of the best countries in the world, if it weren't for the politics. After all, it's a very constant climate. never really gets over 33 degrees and never really gets very seldom under 17. So no heating, no air conditioning, no second set of clothes. That looks like a pretty ideal environment to live in. And they have the Nile River going down through the middle of the country. So there is a constant supply of water, and every year there's a flood, so it brings along new silt to enrich the earth, and it flushes all the garbage out into the Mediterranean Sea. So it can look like a pretty good place and a pretty good life. And the Hebrews thought maybe that was the place they were meant to be, rather than here, starving in the wilderness. So the challenge that Moses and Aaron had for the people was, have faith that God is with you in the midst of these very difficult times. And so there was a promise. Every day there would be bread from heaven, manna, that would come to them to feed them in the morning. Now, there are lots of explanations about manna. One of them is that it was coriander seeds that blew across the land. It looked like tree resin, and they could gather it up and bake it into cakes, and they could survive on that. And also the quails would come and rest at night, so it was easy to maybe grab them, and then the ones that were left would fly off in the morning. And so it was explained that God will give you your daily needs. Every day there would be bread from heaven and meat to eat in the evening. But on the sixth day, they would get double portions, so they didn't have to collect it on the Sabbath. That resource came only once a day. And they had to trust that every day God would provide for them. Trust each day for what it will bring. And that would have to sustain the people for the next 14,557 days that God would give to them. You're probably quite acquainted with the 12-step programs that we have in various areas, talking about challenges and needs for people. And one of the principles in the 12-step programs that originally came from Alcoholics Anonymous was one day at a time. Each day, we're going to look after what we need and do what we have to do and stay away from these challenges that we have. We're not going to worry about the next day or the day after or a week down the road. Each day, we need to have the resources to deal with the challenges that we have. That it keeps the people present focused, keep away from those challenges that you have, and don't worry and think about the future, because that is a distraction. I think that can be a great challenge for us. There are many of us who get so focused on the past that we maybe leave behind the things we need to do for today and how we can fully live what we have in this day. Sometimes we say, wouldn't it be great if the church could be like it was back in the 1960s when we built this place and there were hundreds in the Sunday school and it looked like everything was going so well for us. We might say, wouldn't it be good if we could get back to before COVID? Because there are so many changes that brought, and that will affect us for generations to come, likely. Wouldn't it be good to get back to then, away from the anxiety and the fears and the worries, the loneliness and the hard times that people have had, with the pandemic? Well, there were some of us who were saying, wouldn't it be good? Next Sunday is Worldwide Communion. Maybe we could get back to having that solemn journey to the front of the church and have communion by intinction again, the way it used to be, because that journey was so important for us. And most of us had a little frustration with those little celebration cups and so forth. Well, our worship committee has considered it, and next week we're going to stay with the celebration cups as we have. There's a new wave of the disease, and we want to keep everyone safe. So we will continue to worship with those celebration cups next week. And after all those fingers going into the cup was kind of a little grody anyway. Not quite as bad as everybody's lip on the cup, which is what happens in some churches. We would like to look back to the past sometimes. And of course, a great part of our times of confession and recognition of forgiveness is, wouldn't it be good to go back somewhere and do that over again? That we have a redo of some bad decisions that we made. Or maybe we could relive some of the great and wonderful times that we have. Yes, there are many of us that have a hard time keeping focused always on the present. We so easily look to the past. And sometimes we get too focused on the future as well. We wonder what it will be like when we have a permanent minister and what they'll be like and all of that. We wonder about the future. We wonder sometimes, how are our children and grandchildren going to grow up? What are they going to do? What are they going to be like? What families are they going to have? And we might even dream a little bit about next year's events or holidays and spend some time with that. And yes, looking back and looking forward just seems to be a part of life. It's something that we do. But the lesson today was it's important to not think too much about that. That live each day for the present. It's a day that's given to us, that God will provide for all the needs that we have in that day. As Aaron and Moses said to the people, trust in God to provide your daily needs. So we are called upon to trust that God will help us in every day that we have, and that we keep focused on the tasks and the needs of each day.